Hello everyone, welcome to this GLS webinar. My name is Lydia. I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge. It's my great pleasure to be your student moderator for today. So now I'm going to briefly talk about the plan for the day. We're going to start with self-introduction of our authors and panelists. I hope you've all read the article. If you haven't, the authors are going to do a short presentation to summarize their article for you. And then the panelists are invited to make their comments. And we're going to finish with questions and discussion. So everybody is welcome to join. So now I'm going to give the floor to our authors and panelists to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Sarah Hennessy, University of Cambridge.
Hi, I'm Christine Howe, retired from the University of Cambridge, but the project that we're going to be discussing was my final project before I retired.
Hi, I'm Neil Mercer. I'm here as well.
Hello, I am Antonia Larraín from Chile.
Chris Plasterhan from University of Jerusalem.
Okay, great. I think now we're ready for our short presentation.
As you can see, it's about teacher-student dialogue in classrooms, and the question is, how does it impact on student outcomes? I mean, in one sense, it's a contribution to a field that's been producing a kind of accelerating number of publications over the last 50 years, but it's got some fairly, I wouldn't say unique, but fairly unusual features too. Firstly, the scale of the study that's reported in the paper, and secondly, the fact that the study looks at the impact on student outcomes. It isn't purely concerned with the nature of dialogue. I should say, to put the paper in context, that the research that's reported in the paper is only part of a broader project. During the course of the project, we also looked at the nature of current classroom dialogue in England and looked at its compliance with models of what we might call models of good practice. And we've also followed up the results of our studies with developing the ideas for teacher professional development. And these two themes are touched on in the paper, but they're not central to the paper. The paper is primarily concerned with impact. And we certainly felt that there was a crying need for research on the impact of patterns of dialogue for a range of, I mean, there have been previous studies that have looked at the thing, but for a range of reasons, they don't produce conclusive results. So that's the background to the study. The study used very, very straightforward procedures. As I mentioned already, it was a fairly large-scale study. We had 72 classrooms. We recorded each classroom twice. We recorded the classrooms doing 2 different academic subjects, and we got quite a substantial amount of data from each classroom. We got about 130 minutes of recordings from the classrooms. And our classrooms couldn't have been more diverse in terms of socio-economic background, ethnicity, and so on, within the context of England where the study took place. Having made these recordings, we coded the dialogue using a comprehensive coding scheme that, as we saw it, represented a wide range of ideas about what constitutes productive dialogue, not just our own preconceptions. We were trying to be more wide-ranging than that. Our coding scheme operated on 2 levels. I think, again, this is a feature that's slightly unusual in the field as a whole. We coded speaker turns for actually initially 13 different characteristics, all informed by current literature on what constitutes productive dialogue. But we also rated the lessons as a whole for initially 5 different dimensions. Through a kind of lengthy process of data reduction, which is described in detail in the paper, we ended up with 7 turn level variables and 4 lesson level ratings. These are the ones on which our analysis for the purposes of this paper are based. And in terms of the results, the 3 variables, 2 turn level and 1 lesson level, that are highlighted in red are the absolutely crucial ones. Our approach to analysis was 2-level modelling, looking at the relationship between each of those 11 dialogue variables and a range of student outcomes. We had 6 outcome measures. They covered academic attainment, general reasoning, and educationally relevant attitudes. We also took into account a whole slew of variables that, because they might be related to dialogue or outcome, might confound the interpretation of that relationship. Now, I don't really have time to talk in detail about how we identified these potential confounds, but just to say that we started off with a list of about 150 possible candidates, and through a systematic process we described in full in the paper, we whittled them down to 3, and we used those 3 as control variables in our analyses. So what did we find? Well, we found that high levels of elaboration and high levels of querying were productive for academic attainment, so long as the students participated to a considerable degree. You may remember that participation was a lesson level variable, elaboration and querying are turn level variables. It wasn't elaboration alone, it wasn't querying alone, it was these 2 in conjunction with high levels of participation. In addition, elaboration was productive for positive student attitudes as well. I think that's a very important variable, and this little diagram should help to hammer the message home. It was these 3 variables that emerged from our study as absolutely crucial. So, in conclusion, well, I mean, our results, the results I've just shown you, do support the contention that patterns of teacher-student dialogue are important for student outcome. But that's not to say that all our results were, well, what I might call overwhelmingly positive. And I put on this slide a few possible surprises in the data. Firstly, reasoned dialogue, although emphasized heavily in the literature, didn't prove to be related to any of our outcome measures. And secondly, we didn't find any dialogue variables, any aspects of teacher-student dialogue that were relevant to performance on our test of general reasoning. This said, the quality of group work, which was one of our control variables, was related to performance on the reasoning task, and we think that reasoned dialogue was important in that context. So that's kind of flagging up a possible difference between the group work context and the teacher-student context. I think these sorts of, I mean, are they negative findings, sort of non-relationship, shall we call them, are very important as one moves towards developing a sort of overall theory of what's important in this area. But nevertheless, I think even at this point in time, we can say that our results have all sorts of positive implications. I think they've got an important implication for theory. We've identified some variables that really make a difference, and I think that's helpful for advancement of theory in the area. I think our findings have important implications for methodology. We found very few main effects of any of these variables. Most of our significant findings were interaction effects, and they were often interaction effects between a turn level variable and a lesson level variable. And I think that underlines the importance of coding at several levels of granularity. And of course, the results, although, as I've said already, the focus of the study wasn't teacher professional development. I think it's very important that a small cluster of manageable variables, manageable because classrooms are using them to a considerable extent already, have been shown to have a significant effect. So, if you want more information about the study, here's our email addresses. We have video examples of the kind of things I've been talking about. If you really want to know what it means to elaborate in depth in a context of high student participation, we've got videos that you can look at. And finally, we're part of a much bigger research group, many of whom contributed to the study. Thank you.